Okay, so I believe where we left off, we actually completed 87. Is that correct? I believe we covered this and we're done, so we're now ready to go to, well, if I can get it to, oh. There we go. We're ready for 88. Sorry about that. A little bit of technical this morning. Microsoft did it again to me last night, so that was a lot of fun. Spending time that I can't get back for that. So, section 88. So, while working on the revision of the Holy Scripture, Joseph Smith Jr. came to the books of the Apocrypha. He inquired of the Lord whether these should be included in the revision and was given the following instruction. The revelation was received on March 9th, 1833 at Kirtland, Ohio. And I always find this interesting too. I don't know if you guys have correlated these before, but you go through church history and you go through some of the Joseph Smith papers and different things like that, and you'll find that the dates don't always match up. So some say it's like March 19th, some say it's March 15th. It's interesting to see, and I see that all throughout. There's this argument of what date it was, and to me it's kind of strange because I would have figured it would just been pretty clear. But anyway, if that ever trips you up, that's something that's tripped me up at times. So one of the things I wanted to bring up was kind of just to get my notes here, make this clear. So when we're talking about this particular instance of the Apocrypha, we're not talking about the papyrus that he bought, the Egyptian papyrus that Joseph bought. This is actually something that was in the back of Joseph's Bible. He had the 1828 H&E Finney King James Bible together with Apocrypha. That was the name of it. And it sold in 1829 for about $3.75, which doesn't mean a whole lot, except that's about $150 in today's money. So he did spend a lot of money on a good Bible at that time. And so Joseph and Oliver, by the way, both had the same Bible. Just another note there that's in there. So one of the things I thought would be interesting to kind of look up in that would be kind of one of the pages out of that book. So this is a scan of the actual book, the pages of that book, and it's the book of Judith that's in the back of that book. And so Judith is a faithful Jewish widow, and Holofernes, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, was the commander of the army threatening Israel. And so Judith enters into the enemy camp, gains his confidence, and after he becomes drunk and left with her alone, Judith prays for strength, and she takes a sword and she kills him. This kind of sounds a lot like JL, if I'm not mistaken. For me, it's like, first, certainly don't ever get drunk, but second, don't ever get drunk with Jewish women, because it seems like that's not a good combination there, because you can find yourself nailed to the ground there if you're not careful. But anyway, that's one of the books that's in there. And there's a number of books that are in there. It's like, what was the other one? It was like, it's kind of like the Acts of the Egyptians. In other words, their understanding and their taking on the gospel. There's a number of different books that are in it. It's interesting. One of the things that I found kind of something I wasn't really as aware of until I really started looking into it is that the Protestant faiths actually look at this. They call it an apocrypha, but they look at it as kind of extra Bible, if you will. The Catholics look at it, and they look at it as basically deuterocanonical. In other words, the second canon. So I think that's lower than the first. So like a theological law, we would say that's the versus maybe a democratic law. But anyway, they consider it some sort of a doctrinal type piece that's in that. So I'm talking a lot, but if you guys want to add anything into it, you certainly can interrupt me. Yes, Ben.
Oh, I got two things. You got a mic now? Oh, I can Well, I happen to know of one. The first time I ever encountered the Apocrypha was actually from Latter-day Saints. And that's because Richard Rich, with his Nest Entertainment, now called Living Scriptures, his company made an animated adaptation of a story from Maccabees.
Yeah.
And so that's Latter-day Saints making something based on the Apocrypha, which is kind of surprising, and it's worth seeing. I don't know what to think about the Apocrypha. I'm a little more interested in why exactly the Song of Solomon got left out of the inspired version, because I know it was left out. I'm just not entirely sure why, especially why the Brighamites kept leaving it out, even though they want to put all their emphasis on family and stuff. So if you know anything about that, I'd be very interested.
Yeah, that's a good question. All I really know about the Songs of Solomon being omitted really is hearsay. So I can't point to a point of authority and say this is why they specifically did it. Because I've asked the LDS a number of questions over the years, and it's been difficult, honestly, to trace down some of the origins, even for them. They don't even know why many times certain things. I mean, I think I've told you before, it's like when I was on this hunt for, well, when did you guys come up with this idea, and where did you find the revelation for that when you're 12 years old, you're a deacon, and when you're 14, you're a priest, and so where'd you get that from? And I finally did find someone that basically said, well, it was more or less a kind of a inspired message from, I can't remember if it was Joseph F. or who it was exactly, which president of their church it was, but it wasn't something that they, wrote down, vote like we did. That's not how they do that. But that was kind of where, and it was really more to keep the young men in the church. Young men were leaving the church, and they wanted a way to figure out how to keep them in the church, and so that's what they did, more or less. And they felt that was okay. To me, it was just kind of like I was mortified because, here they argue a line of authority with me all the time, and, everything is jot and tittle and, so forth. And then, oh, well, we just decided to kind of do this, change the structure of priesthood just because. Anyway, yes, Michelle.
Well, isn't the Song of Solomon just poetry about lust? What does that have to do with God?
It's not totally about that. There is poetry in it. I would agree, but there are other parts of it that are not. So one could argue that it might be more of what Joseph was told in the Apocrypha. But here again, I don't have anything that I can point to give you of authority of why it was in or out. So just really don't know. Good question, though. Very good question. You ever find out the answer, let me know. It's really kind of interesting, all the works that were in there. I love how AI is able to put things together for me and make that look so nice, So I thought they did a great job of taking that and making that look like it did. But here again, when I read the book of Judith, I was just kind of like, this really feels like, the story of Jael in the Old Testament. This would be placed, when I tried to place this, basically, this would be somewhere around the temple functioning in Jerusalem again, and kind of the Ezra-Nehemiah period, if you wanted to know, does it fit, kind of? And there's arguments whether or not that fits, because there's one thing that Judith 1:1 calls out. It calls out that Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, ruling from Nineveh. And so historically, Nebuchadnezzar II was the king of Babylon, not Assyria. So that's kind of like, ooh, well, wait a minute. Yeah, there's some issues here. And here again, I can see why the Lord said, hey, it's mostly correct, but not something you need to translate. So anyway. And then one of the things I just in case you were curious, because I'm one of kind of those kind of guys. I looked to see if I could find anywhere where Joseph had translated any of the pages, if they existed. And I am not aware, nor could I find anything where that was the case. So, here again, somebody finds that. Yeah, Brother Ben.
I'd like to maybe offer just a brief explanation of why folks outside our own tradition value the Song of Solomon, while at the same time being very, very conservative on their views on sexuality and completely opposing the sexual revolution. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat what they say, even though it is not what I say, because I do not know. But I can say that there are reasonable people who think this. And what they think is that the way God designed men and women in the beginning, when he designed Adam and Eve, he designed them to bring more human souls into this world in a very beautiful way, in which they love each other and they care for each other, and that design is so important. This is according to people outside our tradition, so keep that in mind. But what they say is that design is so important that poetry celebrating that design was important enough to be included in their Bible. Now, that is undermined by some of the historical facts about the way Solomon actually behaved with regard to that design. So there's a counter argument there. But I can kind of, when I hear their argument on it, I can kind of see why they value it. But on the other hand, given those historical facts about Solomon's life, I can also see why other traditions would want to leave it out. So that is that's just, I would just say that for general information if we're going to think about the Song of Solomon.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I've often looked at, it's, if you look at things from a positive lens and you look at the good things that are there, you can draw good things out of the Song of Solomon for sure, as you could any other, and you could also conversely bring out negative things if you wanted to, out of different things. Just like we were just talking about Jael. Here it's like, wow, that's pretty homicidal. You could look at that and look at all the negative, perhaps, sides of that, and then miss the very purpose and reasoning for that. Or just like what a lot of times the Book of Mormon receives a lot of criticism from in respect to Laban being slain. But here again, that was something that was very common in the Old Testament. And those who are good readers of that understand that for sure. Okay, excellent. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Brother Bob.
Well, I have a notation down here in my inspired version that comes at the end of Ecclesiastes. Says the manuscript of the inspired version states that the Songs of Solomon are not inspired writings. So apparently the Lord didn't think it necessary to include those things in the Bible when he made the correction to it.
Yeah, was that the 1876? Is that yours based off of, or is it the, or no, 1867, excuse me, 1867? Or is that, because I remember somewhere in one of those that was the case. Yeah.
Well, this was copyrighted in 1974.
Okay. Yeah. There's, I think that's, and now that you bring that up, I think there was something in that. I have I believe my version is actually the, mine is the 1867, which then was edited, and which is the inspired version that Joseph worked from. And I was just looking to see if it had a preface page in there on that. Because usually the First Presidency has something that they say in that scripture, and then they'll state whether or not this is, And then from that you could look, but yeah, no, I don't see it in here. But yeah, at some point, the First Presidency, obviously, one of the administrations put that in there. It'd be interesting to see who was the first ones to do that, which prophet it was. So, but anyway, I won't run us down that trail. We're in danger of going through all kinds of buggy rides. So, but all right. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover in all of that. And let's go ahead and go to verse 1a to 1d. Would someone like to read those verses for us? Yeah, Sister Artis.
Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you concerning the Apocrypha. There are many things contained therein that are true, and it is mostly translated correctly. There are many things contained therein that are not true, which are interpolations by the hands of men. Verily, I say unto you, that it is not needful that the Apocrypha should be translated. Therefore, whoso readeth it, let him understand, for the Spirit manifesteth truth. And whoso is enlightened by the Spirit shall obtain benefit therefrom. And whoso receiveth not by the Spirit cannot be benefited. Therefore, it is not needful that it should be translated. Amen.
Any thoughts on that? Yes, Sister Jerry.
I think that 1D applies to all the scriptures.
I think that's absolutely true. You know, that's, I remember, you know, that's one of the things that I feel that when you're studying the scriptures, that if you can spend time in prayer before you actually read, and then once you start to feel the Spirit, then you open the Word and start reading that, I feel that you'll have it open to you, and you'll understand much better what the Lord's trying to tell you in that particular side of it. What are your thoughts? You get the danger of me I've got a lot of stuff I looked up, so you get the danger of me just going on, and I don't want this to be a lecture model. I want this to be interactive, so.
Brother Fred said the same thing when we started the R Revelations. Where do you stop in the RLDS Doctrine and Covenants? And the decision was made to not include anything that came from W. Wallace. He said there was much that W. Wallace brought that was true, but there was that was not true. And so if we print it, those things that are not true could lead people astray. Those things which were true are also contained elsewhere in the scriptures, so there was no benefit from including them. And so we did not include anything from W. Wallace, and then of course Wally B. and on. It reads here the same way. It contains things that are true, but it contains things that are of man. And where do you draw the line? Unless you have spiritual enlightenment, which it goes on to say, those things that were recorded in the Apocrypha could lead people astray.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Other thoughts? Well, one of the things I would like to say is that, whenever time I think about this, I always think about, I was trying to leaf through to find it. I thought, sure, I had marked it down, but in the book of Kings, it talks about Elijah. And I believe it's Elijah. I always get Elisha and Elijah. Kind of twisted in my mind, but I believe it's Elijah. And he's talking about how the fact that the young men or the children are teasing him and saying, "Go up, thou bald head, go up, thou bald head," and he calls the she bears out of the wood, and they eat him. And I'm kind of like, well, that doesn't sound like a prophet to me. You know what I mean? That sounds a little. And here again, if you look at what Kings is written by, it's written by the scribe. Well, what's the scribe going to do? He thinks a lot of the prophet, so he's wanting to bolster the prophet up a little bit, right? And there's some translation errors in that. I don't think they were needed to be changed. I think, as far as the fullness of the gospel, I don't think that was part that was necessarily necessary. But in some of the people that have looked at that critically, they say that those were not children, those were young men, and they were looking for bodily harm. So that changes the context dramatically. Instead of, a bunch of children are name-calling the prophet Baldy, and he calls the she-bears out of the wood to eat him. So, yes, I can see that, there's danger in having something that maybe has been modified, maybe harmlessly, seemingly harmlessly, but not realizing that they had not stayed true to the true spiritual intent that was required. And so I can see that many interpolations, and I love that word because that it's a very mathematical word to me, but oh my goodness, have I seen that occur in religion so many times that people say, well, if this happened and this happened, therefore this happens, and they interpolate it incorrectly. And of course, we see that today with all the different religions that are out there. Any of your thoughts or more thoughts before we go on?
Shakespeare was inspired by that to write Exit Pursued by a Bear.
What's that now?
William Shakespeare was inspired by that passage to write Exit Pursued by a Bear.
Is that right? I had no idea. That's a fun fact. Okay, that is wonderful. I had no idea. There's so many things like that that you just don't know where they come from. Just like what was it? Let George do it, kind of thing. Coming from George Washington. If you don't know the origin of the etymology of the phrase, you don't know that it has no meaning. Who's this guy George, and what are we talking about? And if you don't know the life of George Washington, then you wouldn't understand the whole phrase itself. All right. Any other thoughts before we leave this? Okay. All right. So section 89. Revelation given through Joseph Smith Jr., March 15th, 1833 at Kirtland, Ohio. And I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Somebody got a handle on that? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Chedorlaomac? Okay. Okay, wonderful. Is that Hebrew? Is that just made up? Is it supercalifragilistic? Okay, one of those. Okay. Yeah, it does sound Indian. Yeah, come to think of it.
Which are Hebrew based.
Yeah. That Frederick Williams is who they're referring to. Recently ordained a counselor in the First Presidency, is named for the admission into the Order of Enoch. Okay, and so I thought it would be good to kind of just go over briefly the United Order of Enoch. So the United Order of Enoch can therefore be summarized through several interconnected principles. Consecration, stewardship, care for the poor, building of Zion, faithfulness and accountability, and unity. Now, there are more than that. That's just me trying to summarize it. So I don't want to get caught when it comes to that because, unless you're a part of an organization like that, you don't realize how three-dimensional some things are, and it's language is something that is very difficult. I am just amazed that human beings can converse at all. Got to be honest. Living in the world that I live in, where the language is very defined, and there's a mathematical checksum at the end that says I understood that to 99.999% of accuracy. Human beings don't really have that. We can simply change the tone quality of what we say, and we change the entire meaning of something. All right. Verse 1 and 2, who wants to look at those? Read those, I mean. Oh, okay. Thank you, Brother Craig.
Verily, thus saith the Lord, I give unto the united order organized agreeable to the commandment previously given, a revelation and commandment concerning my servant Shedorlaomer, that ye shall receive him into the order. But I say unto one, I say unto all. And again I say unto you, my servant Shedorlaomer, ye shall be a lively member of this order, and inasmuch as you are faithful in keeping all former commandments, you shall be blessed forever. Amen.
Thank you, brother. Your thoughts? Oh, Sister Jerry?
I have a question. I've heard a lot of different opinions in the past, but why were the code names used, like Shedorlaomer, instead of the person's names?
So my understanding is that because revelations and letters and so forth were going back and forth, being shuttled back and forth, they were worried about enemies finding out where they were and being able to bring harm and or kill. That was my understanding that they were looking to. There was no other, I think, meaning beyond that point. So. So I would have expected one of you guys to say, hey, what about this, why does it say he is to be a lively member? What does that mean in the 1800s? Brother Bob.
Well, I think that means that this is not just an appointed position to fill a job title, that he's going to have to take an active part in this order and actually do something and make sure that all of the information and all of the stuff that he has available will be used for the benefit of building the kingdom.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I went and looked up as best I could on this side of it, and I really believe it to be kind of a business term. Kind of makes sense that it would be. So in business and legal terminology of that century, it more or less is a common or active working partner, like you talked about. It refers to a co-owner in a merchant house or trading company who manages day-to-day operations, handles cargo, and assumes unlimited personal liability, unlike a sleeping or silent partner, which only contributes capital. So that means he's right, just like what you said, he's right in the middle of it. He's required to get his hands dirty and make things happen. So why do you think it was that Frederick G. Williams at this time was called to be a lively member in this order at this time? Thinking about what's going on in the church right now. Okay. I'll tell you everything I've looked up on that. So, because that was one of the questions that came to me, is that why now? Not just because he was, ordained a counselor into the first presidency. There had to be more to it than that, but that certainly was one part of it, I truly believe. But one of the things that you have that's going on at the time is you have, basically you have Ohio and you have Missouri, and both have the United Order. Adding Brother Frederick Williams into the order at this time solidifies the two groups, because Brother Williams has significant land in Kirtland area. So that's one of the things. In fact, he's asked to consecrate that land so that it can be used for basically the printing of the Revelations. So there's a lot that's going on in that time period, and of course, him being a part of the presidency, it simply makes sense for that to occur. If you're going to have someone, if you're looking at something that's uniquely tied to Zion, obviously the members of the First Presidency ought to be a part of it. And recall at this time also that who was in the First Presidency was Sidney Rigdon, along with Frederick G. Williams, with Joseph, of course. And then let's see, what else? Thought I made some other notes here. Yeah, that I think that was basically everything I wanted to really hit on that side of it. Yes, Shaw?
I was just looking and commenting, the fact that section 87, 88, and 89 were all given in the same month.
Mm-hmm.
So the First Presidency was just formed right before this.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, Frederick G. Williams, his ordination occurred in the School of the Prophets. So that's also something that's interesting as well. And there were quite a few things that occurred in that particular time period as well. They were, I think, very significant in the overall side of that. But I think that, when you look at the challenge, too, that's happening here, the other thing that was the other part that I was trying to remember. When you look at the Ohio time period, what was coming to Ohio? There were people that were obeying the gospel, they were becoming baptized, but they were poor. They didn't have lands, they didn't have property, they were just showing up. They were baptized members of the church, and so they were all coming together in community. What's the bishop to do? It's not like he has a whole lot of, I'll put you up in this building over here or this building over there. They don't have a lot. They really don't. I mean, they literally carved the foundation of the temple from the riverbed or the creek bed that was right there close to it, and hewn the timbers right there. They just simply didn't have a lot. And so they had to figure out, how do we share this, but how do we do this in such a manner that it is following the laws of God? I'm sorry, Shaw, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we also, for something else that came up earlier, section 81, we already covered it, which was the Revelation.
Hold that mic a little closer to you.
Section 81, you back up a little bit, is when the order given to Enoch in the church in his day, that's where the standing high council and everything, they're all given unusual names.
Yes. Yes.
This one is not the first one that was given an
Oh, no, it's not the first revelation where that occurred. But that was a question in general, for sure. To my knowledge, that's the only explanation that's truly been given that I could find that was out there. That basically they were worried about the enemies of the church, and there were plenty. And unfortunately, there were some that were, used to be members of the church. And those always seem to be the most devastating type. I don't know why that is. I've always wondered why people can leave the church but they can't leave it alone, kind of thing. I remember in the RLDS church there were people that would leave the church, and they would come up with some of the most heinous books and stories and things of that nature that were just completely unfounded. I mean, you were just straw men out there that they put together and easily proved incorrect, but they did it because they got the fanfare, I guess, or something of that nature. But I don't know what they understand the psychology of that. But because to me, it's like, okay, if you figured out that's not the truth, then go find the truth, and then start go obeying that truth. Why do you need to be, considering there's 8 billion people in the world, you could spend your time more productive in doing one thing versus another, I guess. Although I'm not saying it's not. If you truly believed it was the Church of the Devil, I guess I could kind of see that. But the way they go about it never seems to be in the way of Christians thought. Yes, Brother Ben.
Well, it's kind of easy for us to just sort of wonder why people are so mad when they leave something like Joseph Smith III's movement, which is integrated with the wider American economy. So leaving only means going to church in a different place. Back in the 1830s, if you join the United Order and you consecrate everything you have, and then Joseph Smith comes out with a new revelation that for whatever reason you don't believe in,
Right.
so you decide that you, for whatever reason, no longer agree with the church leadership, then you lose everything and you get really, really angry. I mean, you can just sort of see on a natural level why somebody who was a former member of the church at that time would be really ticked off in a way that doesn't make sense for someone who leaves Joseph III's movement.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, if you, from a United Order standpoint, and certainly even just from the Kirtland Safety Society, there were a lot of people that got hurt in that as well. Yes.
Well, we've all experienced that also. I mean, we put all of our money, time, and effort into the RLDS church, paid for our buildings, and then turned around and had to leave it all behind and start over again.
Or sometimes buy the building twice.
Yeah, that's what I said, start over. I buy the building twice. You already paid for it once. We've all left restoration branches at one point where we put in our blood, sweat, tears, plans, and everything into a building just to have some other people come in and just take it over. So it's still going on.
True.
We might not have lost our livelihood and our actual houses that we live in with our families. But we've lost our churches over and over again.
Yeah. I think but to Brother Ben's point, though, is that yeah. Oh, okay.
I'm just saying, today we still experience a version of that.
Yeah, because I think the point that really stands out to me and what Brother Ben said is that their ability to make money was just now gone. Because if you had a farm, which is how you made money back then, because most people weren't into manufacturing then, it was an agrarian society. So I just now am a pulper again. And I got to start from nothing. And depending on my age and where I'm at, I could see that could be a genuine problem in the grand scheme of things, for sure. So, but anyway, all right. Any other thoughts before we leave this? Okay. And we are actually at time, so I'm going to stop on time. I know that's a shock. I'm going to stop on time. Thank you all for your thoughts and your comments, and let us make preparation